Hello, Trailblazer fans, Blazers Edge readers. Welcome to another Blazers Edge videocast. I am Sam Tung, along with Dave Deckard. We have an email question for you today. And if you would like to email us a question that we can answer either on the videocast or Dave's mailbags every week, please send them in. blazersub@gmail.com, the place that you can send those emails. Our email today, Dave, is Paul. And Paul asking about a topic that's kind of been swirling around the team really these last couple of months. So Paul asks, I was at Friday's Phoenix lambasting and watched last night's far too close victory over the hapless Pelicans and can only wonder what has happened to our team. They don't bring the energy they brought in November and December. What will it take over the offseason to make this team a contender? How can we regain our mojo and our swagger? Why are we playing with less intensity than a team like Phoenix? It's so maddening. Again, that email coming from Paul. So Dave, just this overall idea that, you know, the team, it seems like people sort of have this feeling that the team has kind of this, you know, diminished energy, kind of this lackluster feel. And wanted your thoughts on, you know, what's going to take it to get it back, and is there anything that they can even do in the short term in order to get that? And I guess even above that, do you even see that existing right now?
Yes and no. I mean, if you look at the beginning of the season, everybody's legs were fresh. The rotation was short, and all the right people were getting all the right minutes, basically. Health was not an issue, and the opponents were of generally lesser quality. Plus, the Blazers were the team with a lot to prove when you get like a Portland-San Antonio matchup or what have you. What does San Antonio care about a game in December? For the Blazers, who had a lot of questions surrounding them and a lot of confidence to build, that game meant a lot more. So they tended to be the more energized team. Now, later in the season, the Blazers have 2 All-Stars. They've gotten to 50 wins. They've exceeded expectations. Everybody's tired. Health has been an issue. They've had to go deeper in the bench, and those bench players simply aren't ready to fill the roles that they're called on to fill. All of that looks like an emotional problem, but really I think it's a set of issues that are inherent in the way this team is built and the way the NBA season progresses that evidences itself on top as an emotional or an effort issue, but really that's just the frosting on the cake. Let's put it this way. If you wake up in the morning and the sun is shining and you feel refreshed and everything is going right because it's your 6th day on the job and you're kicking butt, your emotions tend to look pretty good, right? Because of all that stuff. A year later, you wake up and it's raining and drizzling. You're already accomplished what you want to accomplish, more or less. Your coworkers are a little bit more familiar, maybe a little bit of a pain. The company's just kind of flatlining a little bit. How's your emotion now? Right? It doesn't look as good, but that's not an issue with your emotion driving the situation. It's an issue with the situation driving your emotion. And I think we're kind of seeing that now. The Blazers need to rediscover themselves a little bit by rediscovering some goals, rediscovering some priorities, and frankly, rediscovering or newly discovering some more players who will help give fresh life and fresh legs, especially to that bench.
And I'm going to echo exactly what you say, Dave, because, you know, in my short period of time being an athlete, and even that is, you know, can be in quotations, it's something that, you know, when you're playing a game and it might be close, but you know it's not working, it's tough to summon that extra energy to make it work when you know it probably won't work. And I just think that specifically, like in a game against Phoenix, the team's already lost to them a couple times. They're getting burned on the outside, and Phoenix's guards are just eating them for breakfast. And it's difficult, you know, it's difficult to summon that type of energy night after night after night. And we're at game like 75, you know, by the time they're playing Phoenix. So I do think that that is difficult, but I think that the greater thing here, Dave, and something that I wanted your thoughts on is, when something isn't going right, as you said, or at least something isn't, and maybe not going right is an incorrect way of putting it. Maybe it's not going as right as it was before. Um, if you have that experience in the playoffs, it's a totally different scenario because when you're playing the Suns in Game 75, when you're one game away from 50 wins, it's a lot easier to swallow than in Game 4 when you're down, or even Game 3, you're down 2 games to none and things aren't working. You have to summon that energy. I mean, there is no other alternative at that point. And I'm curious what your thoughts are, because it's a different situation when you have 7 games versus 82. And it seems like that I think might be where the greater concern may lie.
Well, there's a plus and minus to this, yes?
Yeah.
The new playoff season is going to automatically renew some of that drive, energy, and inspiration that the Blazers had at the beginning of the season. Because guess what? They haven't proved anything in the postseason yet, so they have a new target to shoot for. Also, ain't nobody predicting that the Blazers are going to beat the Rockets, pretty much. So they have that chip on their shoulder. So that's to the good. They should get naturally some of that inspiration again that maybe they've kind of lost a little bit. The problem is things are going to go wrong again in the playoffs, and they're going to go wrong pretty quickly because the other team is invested in making that happen. And when we've seen things go wrong for the Blazers this year, for the most part, especially against good teams, they don't recover. They just don't. It goes bad. They kind of shrug their shoulders and they walk off the court and they try to regroup for the next game. That's great, but they can't turn it around. And again, part of this is because they don't have enough wrinkles in their game and especially enough talent coming off their bench. I mean, things go wrong for every playoff team. But most of the time what happens is your 7th or 8th man comes in, gives a really inspired performance because, he's not starting. He has a lot to prove, and he hasn't been through this malaise that the starters are getting racked up inside of. So he comes in and pops the other team a good one. Everybody rallies behind him, and all of a sudden they rediscover themselves in the midst of a game. The Blazers what are you going to do? Maybe Thomas Robinson can provide that. Myers Leonard ain't gonna. Mo Williams, hit and miss. C.J. McCollum hasn't seen the light of day forever. Will Barton has been pretty much playing near the floor of his potential. So it's hard to see where the Blazers are going to get that boost after things start going wrong. It feels like they're just putting up sandbags against the tide and hoping the tide doesn't get high enough to swamp the house, because if it starts swamping it, there's nothing more they can do.
That was actually part of Paul's question, though, Dave, is there, personnel changes that can be made? I mean, we're going to be talking a lot more about this going forward, but I'm going to ask an even bigger question. Is this a personnel problem? Is this something that they can address with the guys that they have now, or is it likely going to take, and I probably know your answer, but is it likely going to take, finding another piece to bring in for you to have that energy?
Experience will help, but they've got so much inexperience, and on the bench especially, and as we saw during, for instance, the Roy Oden Aldridge era, that comes with a price. That team developed, but it didn't develop instantly. It takes 2, maybe 3 years for first and second year players to start getting comfortable and to start really being able to contribute at the peak of their ability. Blazers don't have that in terms of contract, in terms of LaMarcus Aldridge's age. So yeah, I think they're going to have to do a shuffle, and I think that shuffle is going to have to happen off the bench, so you do have that extra bullet in your chamber coming off the bench, and you don't have such tired legs at the end of the season, and you do have different options in terms of style of play. The big question for Portland will be, how do they get that extra bench player? They don't have a lot of trade fodder, and they don't want to break up the starters probably. They don't have a draft pick in the first round. Where that extra person comes from, or extra person or two, that's the big question. But that they need that person, I think it shouldn't be in doubt for anybody.
Our thanks to Paul for his email today, blazersub@gmail.com, the spot that you can send those emails in. We'll get to a couple of those every week here on BlazersEdge.com. And I think that's going to do it for us today. So for Dave Deckard, I am Sam Tung. Once again, thank you all so much for joining us here on the video cast and on BlazersEdge.com. We will talk to you all in a couple of days.